All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the first official episode of Step by Step, where we walk people through the process and the strategy of fitness, health, and bodybuilding. And today we have Cameron Cheek from Camp Jansen and Trever Burch with us, who just cleaned house and won nationals a couple weeks ago. So, welcome, guys.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So I want to start the podcast by going around and asking you guys to list one win or one good thing that has happened to you recently. I mean, you can say your Nationals win, Trevor, for example, and then one opportunity where you guys may have fumbled the ball a little bit in personal life or business or whatever, and it's a learning opportunity that you guys have identified. So, Trevor, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, obviously this win was crazy. So we trained to win, obviously, and we were training to get my pro card. I was hoping, obviously, first or second, um, going into this, and I mean, everyone backstage was insane, like looking around, and I try to stay out of my head, but you see these guys backstage, and they're just insane. So, and then going into that overall, like I kind of knew the way that bodybuilding was going with like Derek and Keon, like they kind of were going towards that structure. Um, so I wasn't outruling the overall, but I honestly didn't expect it. I was just keeping myself mellow, keep myself grounded. Cam really had me grounded through that day. Like I didn't go on social media once the day of the show, which is pretty awesome. Just cleared my head, and yeah, obviously winning this just meant the world to me. In one of my posts, I said it's more than just a pro card. Like I've been doing this since I was 16 years old. So my first show was in 2012. Like I didn't start with the best crazy genetics. Like I've just been grinding to create what I had envisioned in my head. And we put it all together. Like I couldn't have asked for a better coach to take me through this. Like I don't think I could have done this with anyone else. Like Cam and I were so dialed in on this. Like it was time. So we made it happen. But yeah. So and
Awesome.
going to hiccups or anything, honestly, like I didn't feel like I had any hiccups. Like everything was so smooth. We started in January for this. Like we did a 41 week prep where I didn't have any cheat meals.
Wow.
Like we prepped for this. So and it was just so smooth by the end. Like I wasn't doing uh like a ton of cardio. I wasn't having to kill myself on food. We'll get into that more for sure,
Yeah.
but it was just so smooth, and
Yeah.
I'm super grateful for it, and did what we had to do. So
Awesome.
Shout
Cam,
out.
what about you? One win, one opportunity. It can be about bodybuilding or anything in life.
Yeah, so rather than just stating the obvious of Trevor winning, I think the biggest win for me, we're getting Shelby, my fiance, and I are getting legally married on Friday at the courthouse where our wedding is in April in the DR. So I think because it's not in the country, we're doing something just smaller here that has to be, I think it's required to do that here. So Friday, that'll be a lot of fun. We're gonna have just our immediate family go get dinner afterwards. That'll be a good time. Um, Hiccups. I guess that I didn't meet her sooner. I don't know. Everything's been going really well
Well,
recently, to be
congratulations.
quite
That's
honest.
awesome.
Congrats, man.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate
Yeah.
that. But yeah, everything's been going really well. I can't think of any hiccups quite at the moment. But I was really happy with how the year finished out and everything business personal.
Yeah. Good. Eric, what about you?
Yeah, well, obviously, just coming off of this season, I competed at nationals also. I got crushed though. I got 16th. But this season, this competitive season, what I really wanted to work on was my mindset and not letting prep really run me into the ground and take away from all the other things in my life. And I think I was able to do that up until about 2 weeks out from nationals, which is a win for me, where I was just so run down the previous season. So kind of the answer to both is prep. I think it was the best yet, but also I think I can still improve staying on top of it mentally.
yeah, the mentality is huge on this. Like like I said, like it was so smooth for this prep, like mentality, physically, like stuff just clicked. So that's just, every prep you learn more too. Like what can I do different, and what could I improve on, and yeah, that mentality is huge for
Yeah.
sure. So
How did you feel going into the show? Like, were your legs heavy? Was it hard to walk, or did you kind of have some life
me,
in you? Yeah.
uh, we kind of backed off like cardio and stuff. Like I felt fresh. I felt mentally
Good.
fresh. I felt good. I have an awesome client base. I'm a coach here in Wisconsin, so I had an awesome client base. I was able to take 6 weeks off from my personal training and just literally focus on this and dial in. And I literally
Oh yeah.
did bodybuilding for the last 6 weeks coming up into the show. So that was a huge stress, like mentally.
Yeah.
But yeah, body felt good. Like I was still hitting PRs. Honestly, like 2 weeks out, I hit an all-time PR on
Wow.
the hack squat. Like for
Yeah.
reps, I didn't go like crazy heavy weight, but I hit it
Mhm.
for like my top set for 15 reps.
Mhm.
I still hit PRs. Like my strength dropped a little bit on my push movements, but yeah, it was crazy. I don't know how. Yeah, I left it all up to Cam, the magician, on this,
That's
but
great. Yeah. So it sounds like everything just lined
it
up
just
perfect.
clicked. Yeah,
Yeah.
like yeah. So I stayed full. I felt healthy. I honestly feel healthy right now, like
Yeah.
mentally, physically good. Like I feel really good.
Good.
Yeah.
When did you
Nice.
and Cam actually link up? Like, did you work with Cam before, like this season, this year, or did you switch coaches, or tell us like how you guys got together and what was that like initially planning everything out?
Yeah.
I have some
So,
funny insight Trevor doesn't know. So I was working with a buddy at the time, Trey Adcock, and this was Trevor and I. We started in 2021 in the fall, and around the time I didn't have a lot of bodybuilders on my roster, and I remember I think Trey had sent me Trevor's page or something, and was like, "Hey, I'm talking to this guy. I think I might be getting him to sign up." I was like, "Bro, if you can get this dude to sign up, like I'd love to have that opportunity." And I think Trevor, you weren't working with anybody at the time, and
yeah.
it was just a month or two after he had just competed at the 2021 NPC USA's, where he came in 14th as a light heavy.
Yeah.
And so him and I got connected then and started working together. Yeah, that fall, I think September, maybe October of 2021.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. We've been together since, like check-ins weekly. Like I've never done an off season before I met Cam, and I've never taken my health as serious as before I met Cam. Like he honestly like changed my life on bodybuilding, like perspective, and
No
what
kidding.
needed to happen to do this.
So what was the assessment, Cam, when you took Trevor on and he had just, you said he plays 14th at USA's. What was the first like couple of things that you did to assess his physique and his health and turn him into a first place guy at Nationals? How did
Sure.
you?
Let me pull up some of his stuff as I'm looking over this. But I do remember when him and I first started working together, um, you know, and I could send you guys photos after this if you want and want to attach it. But he had this physique and frame that you could tell there was just a freak factor to him. You know, he has a small waist, he's got the big rib cage, he's got that almost like Keon-esque vacuum to him. There were just some parts that were incomplete, and I could look at his physique and tell, like, okay, something's missing here, but at the same time, too, there was also something with his physique that just stood out. Like he had that it factor to him that I was like, I don't know if it's just I'm being biased and I just have this pull and draw, and I guess almost like attraction in a sense to what his structure and physique is. Or if it was, that a true vision that I could see. And over time, we were able to continue to work on some of his weaker body parts, which for him have mainly been like his extremities. He's somebody that we had been working together, and I didn't do his training. And he was doing his own training initially. And I think when we finally discussed it after months into working together, aside from just what his split was, he never trained his chest like ever, but he has incredible strength with his pressing movements. And so,
Wild.
you know, it was mainly maintenance volume there. We did want to bring up his back a little bit, but the biggest thing was his legs and arms. And then also maintaining some of that roundness throughout his arms while dieting. That is typically, as he recalls, some of the first things to go when being pushed beyond a recoverable capacity. So that was the biggest thing with him was, you know, making sure, okay, our foundation is set. He was coming off of that USA's prep. So, you know, there were some things that we had to reverse in a sense from what that diet induced in terms of his physiology. Kind of get all that lined up, essentially just set up a nice runway for our off season. And you guys know how it is. It's just kind of pushing and pulling over time gradually, especially with those athletes that do need that long-term growth because that body fat accrual does happen.
Right.
So he was able to do it in a way where he was intentional throughout his off season and stayed focused. And we didn't get super sloppy. You know, we were able to just stay kind of right and reach where we needed to be. And we, like I said, kind of push him up, pull him back. And then we got on a call again prior to this year. It was probably fall of 2022. And it was one of those like, hey, man, I think that we're right there. We're not quite there yet development wise, but I think that somewhere within the 2023 year, we're going to be where we need to be. In a perfect world, I would love for it to be like USA's and North Americans. But I think if we really go all out, we can really for sure make it at least happen by nationals. So that was kind of our goal going into this 2023 season was, you know, we had one more little bit of a cleanup phase. And then from there, kind of just holding and setting ourselves up to truly begin the quote contest prep into the year.
So this was
kind
like
of a 2-year, or was it 3 or 2?
It was 2.
2. Yeah, a little over 2 years.
6 months.
So before that, Trevor, you were just kind of winging it, doing your own thing.
Yep, pretty much.
That's incredible. And,
yeah.
And you made 14th at a national competition.
Yeah, I was just going. Yeah.
Wow. You had a coach before me, didn't you, Trevor?
Yeah, I had a coach before. I don't want to say anything bad, but it just didn't work out. Yeah, so my health was probably in the worst spot it's ever been in after that USA's spot. Like I remember doing my blood pressure and it was like 178/110. Like I came to Cam. Yeah. So, and then when I linked up with Cam, we went right into a 5-month health phase. Like literally 5 months of just, we did blood work like 3 months in and we're like, nope, you're not where you need to be. So we kept pushing and it just cleared out and just really prioritized health and recovery. That was our biggest thing the past 2 years. Making sure
I think looking back, that little health phase that we had, I don't recall that there was anything like drastically off with lab work or anything that was like, oh man, like we're shutting it down for the kidneys for the next 4 months. Yeah, but I bet looking back, we probably could have pulled, because this was also, what would that have been? My second or third year coach. He was 2 years ago. So I don't think I pulled GI maps with athletes as much then, or just wasn't really exposed to seeing what a physique looks like that probably has skewed things on a GI map. Yeah. But I bet you looking back, we probably could have pulled one and seen some things off. It was just like, you know, your inflammation was high and like predictability and just overall like the turnover rate and just kind of the way that things would click and catch, just I didn't think was quite there. And so we had a little bit of a diet that I think if things aren't too far down the domino effect, you could probably just diet somebody and just manage stress well, and it probably starves off most of the things. Yeah, I'm no GI specialist by any means, but I do think that it's very possible that was probably happening, especially with him coming out of the prep. You know what I mean? That we see it all the time. But yeah, as soon as we kind of set that up there and kind of clean things up, and I just kind of learned what he necessarily kind of needed as a coach and how to guide him in that sense, we were able to just take off. And he's been really solid athlete and matured throughout the process as well. And you know, we just kept trying to develop his skill as an athlete and how good of an athlete he can be.
Now, how high did food have to get? Like, what was like the highest? Like, if you do macros or, tracking numbers like that? Do you know how much food you're eating exactly?
Yeah. We, like Cam said, we honestly didn't push that off season crazy. Like I'm looking forward to this off season, moving to the 212 division.
You're asking a dieted down man. His food got pretty high.
You're looking at the data right now.
What was it? What was it?
What? I feel like I could push higher for sure.
Average calories per day. This would have been January, February, so it would have been about 40 to 45-ish weeks out. He was averaging a solid 5,300 calories a day at 235 pounds. So that's a decent bit of food.
Now, was that the start of your prep? Was that a pull down, or was that the peak of the off season?
That was the peak of the off season. I can see here where I start to label things in my notes and put like the amount of weeks out. And so I knew that here it says 42 out. I know at that point I'd went ahead and put a show date down, and my focus and direction was there. But that was pretty much his peak off season weight. And I think after a few weeks holding post cycle, I pulled him down to about 4,400, and it looks like he downtrended 5 to 6 pounds over the next 1 to 2 months before we then made another pull.
Nice. So Trever, you felt like you could have eaten more. You were still hungry at that.
Like I said, we didn't get too sloppy. Like I didn't have a ton of body fat. I still had like my waist was still in. I could still see abs. But yeah, we were eating. I think it was 750 to 800 grams of carbs. But it was clean. Yeah, like 100 grams of fat. It wasn't crazy. Protein was around 300. Like nothing crazy. But yeah, I didn't get too sloppy, and we just kept like the push pull thing. Like we pushed up, and then we'd scale back a little bit during a little health phase.
Did your
final go ahead?
Oh, I was going to ask, did you track your blood glucose and your insulin, your fasted insulin, to make sure that wasn't getting too high?
Yeah, and I stayed solid through there. I think the highest it went was like, I don't even think it went above 100 fasted that whole time.
No, it looks like he got up to the mid 90s, and I think at that point we started to supplement in Novolent N insulin to just help manage that at the tail end of that off season before pulling down.
Yeah, I like to throw in some Novolent. I start off with maybe like 2-3 IUs in the morning, and then if I have to do it again at night, we'll do a nighttime dose and work it up that way.
Yeah, it's really nice, especially when you're, at peak dose in the thick of the off season, where it's like we're probably not being in the best environment, just leaving things here, but also too, it's not the best environment to pull your food down right now at the same time. So I think that bringing in that insulin temporarily is a way to just improve that risk to reward while those doses are high.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Well said. Yeah.
Did you guys oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it looks like that final push was around like that 5,300 calorie mark around, and that stopped about 40 weeks out. And then I think we then pulled into a diet. We can get into that part and how that trended into the prep, but yeah, go ahead.
Cam, in the off season, do you generally deploy ancillaries such as like telmisartan or metformin? We agree here that Novolent can help, and probably Humalog as well, microdose in the biggest carb meals throughout the day. But are you a fan of using like 40 milligrams of telmisartan as well to keep blood pressure under control?
Yeah, I am a fan of it. I don't think that there's a huge a really much discussable huge downsides and negative side effects to bringing it in. And it's one of those things where it just depends on the athlete. Even if I do have somebody that all their lab work is great, if they're super type A and I know that they're on top of everything, know that financially they're in a good spot, I'm probably just going to put it into the protocols because I know it's not a huge stressor for them to grab it, and they probably like taking supplements. But if I've got somebody that I can tell I'm just trying to just kind of build their foundation up as an athlete and their habits and this and that, I'm not even going to tell them to try and go figure out how to order from All Day Chemist and do all that stuff. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like,
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna bring that in because it's not like it's gonna save somebody's life, you know what I mean? But it's one of those things that hopefully over time I'm able to kind of mold that athlete in the way that I want them to. And if we're seeing prolonged drug use over time and just a competitive behavior going on within their athletics, it's not a bad idea to bring in, especially with males.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. So yeah, so it sounds like you have a very moderate approach to quote unquote pushing food in the off season, because I would have thought food would have been way higher for someone of his size. Because I'm much smaller than you, Trevor, and I'm already eating 5,000 calories. You know, 330 protein, carbs range from 600 to 900, fats are 80 to 115. But I'm also like an ectomorphic physique as well. But it's surprising that it's only 5,000 calories that you got up to.
Yeah. And I've been kind of like you said, you're an ectomorph. Like I feel like I'm right in between, like a meso. Like I never really put on a ton of body fat, and I never got to grow at a rapid rate.
Yeah.
So we're right in between. Yeah. So, but like I was saying, like I feel like we're going to structure this off season to set up to be able to push a lot harder. We can talk about our game plans next, but
yeah. So Karen, walk us through like when you actually started making the reductions, like how did you actually do it? Like between toggling between food changes, cardio changes, were you using mostly HIIT? Was he walking, like Eric? I had Eric walking 8 to 10 miles outside, fasted.
And then to take a break from that, we did an hour as hard as we could on the stairs.
Yeah, we really punished him with cardio. What was that like for you, Trevor? Like, what did that look like at the worst parts of your prep? How high did it get?
Honestly, it was like I worked on saving my legs and arms, like we were talking about. So we didn't want to push cardio crazy hard where I couldn't train hard with my legs. We kept my knees intact, and I knew if I did like stairs or biking, my knees would inflame just from past preps. So it was literally just elliptical or treadmill walking. So we kept track of my steps. I think my steps went up to 10,000 as my normal for prep, and we just kept that consistent. And then cardio was like scaled. Like I would have my refeed days, and we take cardio out, and we have a lot of breaks. But honestly, this is the least amount of cardio. It didn't even feel like I had cardio this prep. It was so nice. And then my output was high. So my legs stayed full. My output on training was super high. Like I was saying, I still PRing on everything. We just kept my legs full. I didn't depend on cardio as the variable to cut.
So for a lot of his prep, and I think it was up until towards the end where we just simplified things, but his training split was interesting. He had a 14-day training split. So again, his weak points and just his, I guess, in my opinion, his fragile areas where I kind of need to be careful as he's dieting down were his extremities. So his split, I know at least for the majority and start of the prep was you had to pull lower A, arm delt, rest, push, lower B, rest, pull, lower C, arm delt B, rest, push, legs D, and then rest. So it was 3 on, 1 off, 2 on, 1 off. And there was a leg day every, 3-4 days in there. And a lot of his cardio, we maintain that baseline of about 8,000 steps, which is about what he would get just in day-to-day life through work. So we just made sure to maintain that out the gate. And then, with his dieting, the way that we worked things was we finished that last off-season push, held for about a month. And then around 40 weeks out, while he was still on his cruise in TRT, I just slowly started pulling him down from about 40 weeks out, I think, until about 26, 27. And then we started his cycle for the show at just lower, more moderate doses just to get something in because that cycle duration was going to be longer. And then I brought food back up for about 4 to 6 weeks to just reestablish a good foundation within his training and roundness, and also just allow those doses to saturate. And then from there, started pulling him back down again. But his cardio stayed at his normal, just think I had him at about 15, 20 minutes, about 200 calories on only his upper body days, just for cardiovascular health to start the prep and to make sure that things weren't going to be just drastically difficult whenever the cardio did start working up. And then once we started bringing cardio or making escalations within that, which it looks like there's August, that would have been about 16, 17 weeks out. We took his cardio from just probably, again, like 15, 20 minutes, 4 times a week on upper body days, to then 300 calories fasted on his non-leg days. So I think at the beginning of the prep, he actually had cardio fasted all days except for those leg days. So even on his rest days, and then built up to adding in cardio on the lower days, and then we pulled it from the rest. So he would have like 35 minutes ish fasted on his upper days, and then about 20 minutes post workout on his leg days. And then I scaled that up, just working the fasted on upper body days up always higher than what that post workout on leg days would be. But it looks like the most things ever got to was about 35 to 45 minutes fasted, and maybe 20 to 25 minutes post workout on his leg days. And we probably only steps. Yeah, so we probably only maintained that, it looks like, for maybe 4 to 5 weeks, and then started working it back out, and I pulled the cardio off the leg days post workout, and then we started working that fasted number down. But I remember there was a point where I was like, okay, I want to make a push here this week. Let's ramp this cardio up. And then 5 days later, he checked in, and I was like, yep, nope, pulling that back out. I remember his legs flattening out, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to go down that direction. So
that's really cool, though. You used the health phase as kind of a pre-prep moment to like pull down a little bit.
Yeah, I like to
reset a little at the official start of prep.
Yeah, it's a strategy that I like to pull with somebody that maybe I haven't prepped before and I don't quite understand, my certainty for precision with it. I want to give myself a little bit more room to mess up or just kind of not feel pressured or rushed as I go. But it's one of the things that I really like to do, where I like to give a buffer period, because whenever you're laying out the timeline, the first thing I do is I'm lining up weeks on and then weeks on a TRT to just make sure that everything makes sense there. And I would say 9 times out of 10, I try and stay away from having that shift in his energy balance and drugs at the same time. So I like to almost have one leverage the other. So for example, we finish this peak off-season cycle and someone pulls into a holding phase. Yeah, I do think that it helps big time to, just almost solidify what's put on. But I think it also makes for a much easier transition and way to maintain grasp of training. Or if they're not able to maintain that same output within their training, it's a lot easier to pick up and figure out where things need to be, versus drugs come out and food gets pulled at the same time. And then kind of same thing, with bringing those doses back in, because his starting doses at that 26, 27 week out mark was, I'm just going to say it, sorry, Trevor, 500 chest, 250 primo. So it wasn't anything crazy.
Oh yeah.
But I didn't bring food up initially right when that first week that drugs came in. Again, I kind of rode out that diet for a couple weeks there, or probably rode that diet out for a couple weeks and then brought food up and held probably about the same time we would actually even be noticing something from those doses.
I love that. That's a nice long game strategy.
Yeah. I did the same thing with Austin Espy, Elias, that won a super heavy class. Because it just, you can get it done in one go, and he pulled from like 235, 240 to 205-ish before cutting weight. And you definitely can get that off in 16, maybe even 12 weeks if you're busting ass. But
sure.
I just don't want to set myself up for failure.
So 235 peak off season, 205,
43, I think was my heaviest.
243.
Yeah,
240.
the
He's not
heaviest
letting
that
a pound slip. He's
Yeah.
holding that.
I was like peak, and then once we started like that health phase, I think I was like 235 once the jump
Dropped
weight
about
came
10,
off. And,
A
yeah,
little bit of
so,
water and stuff came
yeah.
off. Yeah.
inflammation,
That
water.
insulin weight.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think it's insulin probably. So
So then you came down to about 205, very lean. And then how did you get under the 198 for the weigh-in?
oof.
Pull up this
Sauna.
cheat sheet.
Sauna.
Yeah.
Make
Well,
it there.
hold on. I want to
man.
ask another question first
Yeah.
before we get into the making weight.
Okay. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we've taken our listeners now from how they linked up the off season, the health phase. We gave very specific details, which usually aren't given on podcasts. So
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. This is like
no,
fascinating.
people love that.
Fascinating. Yeah.
Trevor, I want to ask you, like during this like 40-week prep, did you have any like snags that happened like in your personal life, like work or whatever? Like, did anything like pop up that derailed you and you and Cam had to, scramble or kind of like change your approach temporarily?
Personal life, honestly, like I have such a good support system, and my wife Amanda's been amazing like through this, and she kind of knows when to, she reads the room, like if I need to just chill, I chill, but she's been awesome. No real snags, like I said, I have my own business.
Yeah.
And I can kind of pick and choose when I want to train and pick and choose my clients, but
Yeah.
like I said, I've been doing this since I was 16. So like, this is my goal. Like I've been doing this my whole life. So we set up this year to be perfect. Like I told Cam at the beginning, even when we were talking about when to do a show, like I told him, like, if I need to take longer, I will. Like whatever needs to happen, like let's make it happen. Like I'm in for the long run. And Cam's like, I think we're ready to pull the trigger, and I was set. So
Yeah, he's been really easy. And I know there's a lot of coaches that say, oh, he's a great athlete, but Trevor, he's super invested into his craft and a student of the game too. And I saw it even more when he came down here and, at about that 2-week out mark. And there was one of his training days where I was like, hey, like, I want you to do what you've been doing, but you run point on the workout. And I trained with him. And, I can just tell that he's passionate about the lifting and the training and progression, and almost has that same knowledge that a power lifter would when it comes to their intentions behind their training performance and being analytical with it. So it made for really great communication throughout the prep. And when we had that call back in the fall of 2022, back where I was kind of like, oh, I know that we're kind of like right there, and just wanted to let him know that, like, hey, you're almost there. Keep pushing. I don't know exactly what show it's going to be, but you're right there. And I can recall being like going for a walk and being on the call and him, saying like, hey, I'm in no rush. Like, if you want to take more time, like whatever you think. And I remember that just put me in a position where I was like, okay, he's putting the ball in my court here. He's going to give me more time. I'm going to take it. And so
that's a lot of trust.
That's a lot of pressure
sure.
too. Do you feel more pressure because he was so trusting and so, just such a great mindset? It's like, damn, I can't fumble this on this guy.
Well, it honestly takes pressure off of me whenever an athlete puts me in that position, because although he still essentially was like, hey, we can take more time, and most people are going to be like, oh, that coach is probably going to take the time. It also, there was still the uncertainty in the air, but there was an admission of acceptance to the uncertainty from him of like, hey, I'm okay with whatever. So I still made sure that I didn't overpromise anything, or on that call say, okay, that means we're going to do nationals. You know what I mean? But it put me in a position where I knew that I could come to him, and worst case scenario, we'd be 3 weeks out from nationals. And I'm like, hey, we still need more size. I allowed that uncertainty and focus on his physique rather than a specific date and timeline that we were trying to make it for, keep floating, and just continue to keep that communication up of like, okay, no, I think we are looking right here. I think we are moving in the right position, in the right spot. And I don't know. It's just one of those things where Trevor's one of those athletes where I can for sure have zero ego in it. And I know that he knows that I'm human and I could admittedly make a mistake and not have any kind of like worry or like daunting feeling of like, oh man, he has doubts within me or the program and process.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
you
you set
see
it up
that
in
a
such
lot.
a way, like,
I think I saw like I don't know who it was, but it doesn't really matter. But like some athlete like quit like days out from the show, or like they switch coaches like literally like 3 weeks out. I'm just like, damn, like what happened there?
That happened
But
to me 3 days out from nationals.
Oh man.
yeah, this
yeah,
year.
yeah. I think Eric, you may have sent me some post or something. I was just like, geez, I don't know what happened there. But
Yeah, somebody was just airing their dirty laundry about whatever,
yeah,
but
the industry's crazy, right?
yeah.
But speaking of being only a couple days out, so tell us. So you said that Trever was 208 when he was in Georgia visiting you.
Yeah, so I've got it all pulled up
Yeah.
here. Just a backstory. Essentially, what I did this past year, I hired an interior designer. And when we bought this house, there's a Jack and Jill bedroom suite on the other side of the house. And so I turned that into like the athlete suite, and they've got their full setup bedroom, the bathroom in the middle, and then the other bedroom we turned into a posing room. So
Wow.
ripped out the carpet. It was Mark Tominik's wife actually that did the interior designing. We ripped out the carpet, put down like rubber mat flooring, painted the walls with like a matte black paint, put up velvet curtains over the window, front mirror, back mirror, stage lighting, and then we put a TV in there, a Peloton, elliptical, treadmill. And so I did that so that way I could bring athletes down 2 to 3 weeks out, or if they just came to visit whenever. But that way they could come down. And for some of these people, if they're a mom or a dad and they have a super busy life, like I want them to be able to be selfish and be an athlete and kind of, hey, like, I know you got all this going on at home in your personal life, but like it's time to turn it on now and flip that switch. Like nothing matters from now until after the show. And so
Super cool.
bringing him
That's really
down
cool.
there and being able to just see him go through all of that, it was where we really started to create a lot of leverage and separate ourselves with the detail.
Very cool.
Awesome.
From what you just said before, it sounds like you guys have a really good coach-athlete relationship, which I think is so important. It sounds like, Trever, you trust Cam a lot,
Yeah,
and,
totally.
and
Like,
vice versa, which, whether it's bodybuilders or lifestyle clients, I feel like a lot of people miss that. Just trusting your coach, communicating with them, like you said, understanding that they're human, and mistakes can be made, but that doesn't mean they can't be fixed, right?
and that's
Yeah,
why
sure.
we did such a long prep. Like we had room, like if something happened, like luckily nothing happened. Like I kept progressing on everything, but we had that time if we need to change anything. And like Cam said, like if I wasn't ready, like 4 weeks out, I wasn't ready. Like I was okay pulling the trigger on that. So
Yeah, he his athletic maturity, like I said, was just where it needed to be. And it from what I can recall, it was always there. But if it wasn't, it definitely we had time to, again, set ourselves up to make sure that we are developed and ready to start that prep, not only physically but mentally and from a mature aspect too. Jeff, I know that you wanted to. I feel like I kind of brought us away from it, but going back to that making weight and him
Yes.
sitting at 208. So yeah, he hit about that 204, 205 mark right before he flew down to me, and he got to my place at 11 days out. And I don't know if it was no. So he got here was super duper flat when he was at that 205, 204 mark, 204 mark. And then I remember drafting up kind of his peak week layout and just kind of my direction and where I think things would go. And so at about that 10-day out mark was also that point where I was like, okay, let me get one more big feeding in here and just, collect some data trends on that, so I have an idea when loading him, and also just visually so I can see how he responds with food in person. And he was at 205 that morning. We fed him. See, his baseline prior to that was 300 protein, 240 carb, 40 fats. I fed him 230 protein, 750 carb, 110 fats. He went from 205 to 207.8. Put him back to that baseline, and it looks like over the course of 4 days, floated 207.8, 207.4, 208, 208.8. I don't really know why weight was going up. Well, we were reducing his clean, yohimbine, reducing his steps. Cardio was pulled at that point. And sometimes you see weight drop, but I think he was so flat that instead of his weight dropping, it actually went up a couple pounds. Yeah, and he held better.
Yeah.
And then we got basically just rode that baseline out until 6 days out. And I pulled protein down from 300 to 260, carbs from 240 to 200. For 2 days, weight dropped to 206.2. And then I actually started to scale his fats up from 40 up to 75 from 6 days out to 3 days out. And as I was doing that, I also reduced his protein and his carbs. So his calories stayed the same or dropped. And we finished at we hit 204.8 again, around 3 days out before we then started to make changes with his fluid. Ended up using some diazide and reduced carbs even further because he had weigh-ins about midday, 2 days out.
Right.
So
yeah, I like pulling protein as well. That's a strategy that some people aren't afraid to do.
yeah.
But I've had great success pulling protein down and increasing fats, exactly like what you described there.
And when he had a physique that, he was already in shape, and he was kind of on that cusp of, when he got flatter, and I said I started to reduce his clean, yohimbine, cardio, and everything like that, rather than him dropping weight because he was at such a flat place. Sometimes I feel like you can continue to carry momentum in the peak week by reducing things like protein and then bringing fats up or carbs up in that same amount of calories that were reduced to just maintain that same energy balance, but just get a little bit more, I guess, bang for your buck when it comes to the calories you're putting in and the desired outcome with the physique.
A little more satiety from the fat.
Here's a side question for you, Cam. Have you ever noticed, like in your female clients, that they don't respond too well to Clen or Yohimbe? It makes them watery and their blood glucose starts to go up. Have you seen that?
I've seen more anxiety with females with Clen and not being able to handle it as well, not just from a milligram absolute or microgram absolute standpoint, but I think that females just become a lot more fragile and delicate within their response and just stress tolerance, especially as they're pushing down more and more. It would make sense.
T3. Some females don't respond well to T3.
Yeah, and I think once you start pushing that T3 really above the like 37.5 a day, that's where it almost just seems like, are we even noticing as many because like you can bump from 25 to 37.5 sometimes, and I feel like can really see a big change and things are moving positive, but then bump from 37.5 to 50 and it's like, and that wasn't the same response that we saw last time.
Yeah. The figure girl that I had at Nationals, she ended up getting third. We were doing a very, very low dose of T3 in the beginning, and she quickly watered over. It just wasn't the right drug for her. Yeah, even Clen and Yohimbe, like very, very, very low doses. Like 5 milligrams of Yohimbe is enough.
I think females are just a whole different animal when it comes to fatigue management. And I don't know, it very well could be that, those compounds just not necessarily play a different role, but just impact females differently. But I would I would want to think it more so just has to do with the overall just stress that's being applied into the picture, and that's probably just adding into the mix or making that smaller margin of error harder to really find within the sweet spot.
Yep, I agree. So you made weight. You brought his fats up, his carbs down, a little bit of diazide. Did you run the diazide multiple days, or was it just like the day before, the night before?
So I think we used it 3 days out was the first time. Weigh-ins were 2 days out, so we used it 2 days out. We used it on Fridays. We used it all days, didn't we? 3 days out, 2, 1, and show day. I think because, and I'm usually pretty conservative when it comes to diuretics.
Yeah.
I would say most of the athletes I've prepped this year didn't use diuretics. But with him bringing it in at 3 days out, I'm pretty sure that I made an intention just to continue to keep trickling that in, just because I wanted to just keep the same, I guess, environment as we had, especially at a 3-day out point, bringing in diuretics and that hard weight pull.
Were you doing?
You got to be careful.
Were you doing any water loading that peak week?
So we didn't load water just because his baseline was already at 7 liters, or maybe he was at 6 and I just told him to go to 7 whenever he got to me. But he was at 7 liters per day all the way up until 3 days out.
So that's like 3 days, that's like 2 gallons pretty much, right?
Yeah,
it's like basically right under.
Pretty close to 2 gallons. Yeah.
Yeah. At 3 days out, I pulled him to, it says here 116 ounces, but yeah, I started him out at basically what his baseline would be if you broke it down meal to meal at the forefront of the day. And then I monitored his weight every single meal the day prior to this before making changes to his water. So I knew where his weight targets were at every meal.
Okay.
And I can estimate his flushing and where he would be. So I actually started to then reduce his water into that afternoon to get that desired PM weight. And then we brought in a fourth of diazide. Here it says 6 p.m. at 3 days out. And then it's 10 p.m. again. We brought in another fourth at 3 days out. And that took his peak.
Even water balance. It's like whatever you piss out, you try to drink to maintain.
Yeah, because it was kind of like I kept water high at the beginning of that day because I knew that would promote flushing. And as I started to reduce his fluids as the day went on, what he was putting out started to slow down. So I then brought in that diazide to keep pushing it. And his usual PM weight, because I started monitoring that at about 2 weeks out, was sitting at about 211 to 213. And I knew he flushed on average 6.5 overnight. So we had weigh-ins 2 p.m. on Thursday. So that Wednesday night, I ended up getting his PM weight down to 206. And he'd woken up that morning at 205 too. So then he woke up the morning of 2 days out at 201. And then from there, same strategy with water. I want to say we brought in a liter to start the day with just like a small meal to get electrolytes in to start the day. And then at 10 a.m. I put in another fourth. And we had, I want to say, a couple hours where his weight would start flushing down and then it would kind of hold. So that we'd have to bring in a little bit more fluid and then put him back in the sauna and then push him back down again. So there was a little period where we kind of like took a step back to then take 2 steps forward. But he ended up making weight. I think it was right around like 2-3 p.m. It was something like that. Poor Andrew, my classic guy. He didn't make weight until like 7:30 p.m. that night. He didn't have his first meal until like 7:45 that night. So,
no food the whole day.
Yeah, just had been having to give him fluids. He had Jolly Ranchers, but he couldn't swallow. He filled up a water bottle of spit.
Oh my God.
That's like
brutal.
It's like a wrestler or a fighter trying to make weight.
So after Trever made weight, now what was that carb up like? Because what was his stage weight when he actually?
This was really cool. Yeah. So we basically trended my look on my weight So I literally stayed between 201 and 201.6 that whole day. And we literally did pictures and then weight and decided what we were going to eat from there for every meal. And we trended my look with that weight that whole day. So it was pretty cool process.
Yeah, he got down. I think he got down to like 197, maybe 198, like right there at the cutoff.
So I made weight at 198.2. Like I was 198.4 after the sauna. And then I made weight at 198.2. And that's when we had I think we got in like 2 or 3 more meals that night after that weigh-in.
Yeah.
So not like a super heavy carb up, just like kind of keeping it tight.
Oh, yeah.
No, he didn't need anything crazy, honestly. And I think it's also because we didn't have any crazy depletion throughout the week either. You know,
just water really for the weigh-ins.
Yeah, he had a couple days where his food got I think like 175 carbs for maybe like 1 to 2 days, but we weren't like driving his cardio hard throughout the week. You know, his baseline, even before we really tried to kind of get his weight down, he was still mid 250s with his carbs. We scaled his fats up too over the course of a few days, and I think that helped.
Yep.
But he didn't need to load crazy at all. I actually remember both of these guys looking over things. I think like at the end of the day, when I was kind of just reviewing stuff before the next day, it was almost like, okay, like the numbers don't look how I think they would, but the physiques do. Let's roll with it. So like 2 days out, his totals, you know, before making weight, the meal that he had at 8 a.m. that day was 126 grams of beef and 70 grams of banana. That's only like 16 carb. Yeah, like hardly nothing. But his total on that entire day was 205 protein, 365 carb, 80 fats. And we got in 4 meals after making weight. So, you know, as soon as he made weight, told him to have 16 ounces of water, wait 30 minutes. And then he had his first meal, which was 4 ounces of 99 lean turkey, 250 rice, 100 banana, 20 honey, 10 coconut oil, and then just his baseline sodium.
Good.
And yeah.
How'd you feel on stage, Trevor? Did you feel like full, like you could pose, like the life was there?
I felt good. Yeah, everything. And I wanted to keep it tight. Like I knew I was playing on my strengths, so I wanted to keep my waist as tight as possible. I think I told Cam that like I'm fine with whatever. I just want to keep this as tight as possible and keep my waist sharp. So, but yeah, I didn't pump. I literally did 0 pump up. I didn't touch anything.
Yeah,
that's smart.
And I was the only one standing in line, just like I was like first in line. Like everyone's pumping up, and I'm like, I was sitting on the floor.
You're just ready. Yeah.
I was sitting on the floor while everyone was in line. And then while they were kind of lining everyone up, I got my oil on, and I did oil like 3 times because I kept absorbing it. So I started standing in line. I had to get more oil. Yeah. So it was like drying up. My skin was just absorbing it. And then I literally just walked out there and like pumped up as I posed, but I had good contractions. Like I could feel my arms and legs. Yeah. I didn't have a problem with posing. So
that's amazing. Sounds like you guys nailed it. Just nailed it.
The way that we time things for prejudging, it was a bit of a learning lesson that I had as a coach back at last year's Olympia. It was the first Olympia I'd ever been to. And I had a classic guy, and last year there were like 46 guys in classic. And, you know, where I messed up and really just didn't have experience, so I didn't know going into it. I didn't really put 2 and 2 together that they would come out initially and then have their individuals. There was going to be another hour before they went back on stage again. And my guy didn't go back to his phone afterwards. He was kind of just hanging out. And I was, you know, text him like, down honey, down something, like, please tell me you're seeing this. And he just never saw it and went on there flat. And I knew with Trever, there were like 44 light heavies. And I had really good confidence going into it. Like, okay, you're going to be able to just stand out and get eyes on you, regardless whether you're pumped or whatever, just from a structural standpoint. So I was like, okay, if I can get judges to notice you and deem you within that top 8 to 10 that they would call out initially, then we're good. And I basically just told him going into it, I was like, okay, I don't even want you to pump up for that initial comparison. I think maybe he did a couple rounds for like his arms,
I
but
didn't even touch my arms. I literally did band, like one set of like a stretch to like open up my shoulders. And then I set the band down.
yeah, I had him do like 1 to 2 rounds just as I was looking him over before he went on for that individual. And then he knew every time after he got off stage to go find me at a certain spot. We'd find each other. And then I told him, you know, after you go through this individual routine, if you feel like you start getting any kind of pump, just wait. And so I just had him go on cold for everything. And, you know, if he did pump up any before that final call out that they went through, it wouldn't have been much.
That's
Incredible.
awesome.
That's really
So now
awesome.
post show, I saw some photos. So we'll wrap this up with your post show. You are still super lean. Well, obviously, you know, we're only like a couple weeks away from the show. So are you in a health phase right now, or are you guys pushing to get some growth, or what's the strategy here and beyond?
Honestly, like I haven't eaten that much. Like we went out to like In-N-Out. I had 2 burgers that night, and then I went to bed and pretty much fasted for like 16 hours. Like after I even got off the plane and everything, I got home, and then I had like my first meal of like turkey and rice when I got home. But I haven't eaten that much. Like I did 2 subs this week, and then my weight today, this morning even, was 207.6. So it's still hanging around that like peak week weight at the beginning of the week.
Man,
So,
you are incredibly disciplined. That's really impressive.
Yeah, I'm hungry.
One thing I want to add to,
I'm hungry, but
because I think that this could maybe hold some value to any listeners that maybe are post show or possibly just struggling and hear Trever and they're just like, this dude doesn't even care about having free meals. Like I'm sitting here and can't stop thinking about it. Like, why is he like this? Trevor's definitely a foodie. Like when he got down to my place, I remember I would be eating like a coach meal and like just be putting together some kind of sandwich or something. I don't know. And I remember like getting it out of the microwave and turning around and I just see Trevor looking at it. Like every time, just like, oh, what are you making? What are you having? He's definitely a foodie, but you know, he just has an understanding of actions have results, and you know, he's able to understand what he's okay with having within those results and those expectations. And you know, he's just had practice and done this enough to realize like, hey, this food's not going anywhere. And so he's done really well coming out the show. Since he did have a 27-week cycle, or I guess 27-week cycle into the show. And you haven't done labs yet, have you? I know we haven't gotten results back, but
like 2 weeks ago.
We haven't done labs yet post show, but with him having a 27-week cycle and just knowing Trevor's patience as an athlete, we're not in any kind of rush to try and make any crazy kind of growth and gains right now. So we went ahead and I just pulled him to 200 tests a week. We've got 3 IUs of growth hormone in per day. We're still tapering out his T3. If not, we're still tapering out that T3. And then really just kind of dissipating some of these dieting symptoms. And again, just setting our runway up really nicely for the off season. You know, want to try and get him to get some serostims on hand instead of using generics. And just set us up for a nice 2024 of growing, and 2025 we'll revisit when we want to, you know, set up for a pro debut. But I know with somebody like him, there's not going to be a pro debut to just see where you stand. I know that we're definitely going to try and come into it where we can contend to win.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I feel good. Honestly, post show, like I said in the beginning, like my health, I feel like I could walk in right now and my health would be pretty good. Like looking at blood work, like I don't feel skewed just from because I've had it before where I've done blood work and felt it. We've kept it tight, and my food's around like 400 grams of carbs right now. And like, I wasn't hungry once in prep, but now that we're post show, it's like you get a little bit more food, and I'm like, I'm feeling it for sure. But I know like actions have consequences kind of thing. So just keep it tight right now. And We'll worry about growing when it's time to grow. We'll just set up this off season to make it in the long run.
For
Make it a long
sure.
run.
We just changed up his split a little bit because I know that, again, still his same areas that we were wanting to bring up in the past. There's still areas we need to bring up. His physique overall, he's Trevor, you're what, 28?
Yep.
Yeah, you can. I think I put something on my story maybe a week ago or something, but you can still tell looking at his physique that he still has young muscle to him. Like there's just not quite that graininess and density and just dug out lines to him, just from sake of, again, him just having that younger muscle look. But we do still want to bring up arms, legs, overall just maturity throughout his look and just density to his back. So we reset up his new split, and he's got pull and triceps for his first day, then a glute ham off, push and biceps, and then quads off, and then an arm delt day, full lower off. So
Cool.
that leaves
Cool
us
split.
room to toss in another pull day, probably once drugs and food get higher down the road. But again, yeah, it's just, another rinse and repeat of the same process, just in a different direction of just kind of setting our foundation up and runway to be thinking 3 steps ahead.
Exactly.
It sounds like you guys are setting yourselves up for massive success.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We're trying to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Smart with this off season. Like, don't just, like, I've done rebounds where you just blow up 40 pounds in the first month and you feel huge, you feel good, but the rest of the off season's shitty because like you didn't prioritize your gut health in the beginning, and now you can't eat 500 grams of carbs and you're wondering why you're not growing, and it's just a downhill spiral. But I'm excited for this off season. To do it right.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm excited to follow along and see what you can do in the pro ranks.
Yeah, for real.
Cam, I'm sure we'll keep in touch. I have some other questions for you that I'll ask you the emails and stuff. But anything else that you guys want to add? Cam, where can people find you for coaching, and Trever as well? Because since you do some coaching as well, why don't you throw those out there, that info?
Trevor, you want to go first?
Yeah, so my Instagram handles, it's Trever Burch, just Trever Burch, and then I own my own business called Back by Burch. That's just my LLC. So I coach all
got
here.
A big bag.
Yeah,
Come on.
I like the alliteration.
Yeah, I'm a coach under Camp Jansen. My social media, I'm mainly just on Instagram, but Cameron_Cheek. Guess that's where to find me. Also Atlanta, but don't come here to find me. But yeah, whatever questions you guys got, I'm on no rush or anything, but that is definitely where to find me.
All right.
Well, this was incredible, guys. Thanks for sharing all that info and chatting with us. Can't say thank you enough. It's very cool.
Yeah, definitely a lot of detail here that people will enjoy. So thank you both for walking us through it. And I'll try to post this up tonight. So it'll be on like YouTube and Apple Podcasts and stuff. So I'll tag you both in it. But other than that, thank you both, and we'll keep in touch.
And massive congratulations one more time to you both.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, super great work, both of you. All right.